At Dow, wonder is the foundation of every great achievement. It's what bonds us together, pushes us to keep finding solutions, and lets us create something from nothing. Without that spark, there is no science, no creativity, no thirst for knowledge, or hunger for change. But with it, the breakthroughs our customers need most are just one innovation away. As we work to create a more connected world, a more circular economy, and more climate-conscious technologies and solutions, we're designing products alongside our customers with their biggest challenges in mind, so we can grow with the world around us, starting with our promise to reach zero carbon emissions by 2050. Every solution we find is fueled by wonder and powered by science. It's this fuel that drove our past and propels us to the future. Wait until you see where wonder takes us next.
All right. Well, thank you, Dow, for again sponsoring us. It's always great to have companies like Dow allow us to have the space to learn and grow. And so, for each one of you, I want you to think about some of the struggles that you might be facing at work. Um, you could put in the chat box if you have something specific, but what are some of the things that maybe you felt like was very frustrating for you? I'll share a story for me. I think one of the challenges that I felt was I always had bad managers, and I've talked about this in the last series that I had this bad perspective, which I didn't realize was a wrong perspective, where my best work was being stifled because my managers were bad, right? And I shared in the last conference series about how a lot of it was because I could only work then in certain ideal situations. And I think what's important for us to start thinking about is like if we are really limited to be able to do things in those type of settings, then what is it that we are unable to do? And how does that kind of further impact us in a different way? Um, I think about also just having frustrations with like, oh, I don't know how to work with this customer. I don't know how to get promoted. And I think one of the hardest things that I really had to struggle with was I work really hard. I get really great results. I'm doing what people are telling me to do, but yet I'm getting frustrated because the impact of the work that I have is not what I thought it would be, nor am I getting the people that should be engaging, participating. Why aren't people pulling their own weight? Was a thought that I had. And it was really hard for me to achieve not only just a career advancement, but let alone just my own career goals. And so, there's a saying that we want to work smarter, not necessarily harder. And I think sometimes we're really good at indexing on the things that we want to work on, but sometimes we may need to index on the things that really should focus on. And I put a quote in earlier that Peter Drucker says that efficiency is doing the right things, efficiency is doing the things right, effectiveness is doing the right things. And I think this really tells me about I was focusing on pretty much doing efficiency on what I thought needed to be done in order for me to, gain stakeholder agreement, for me to help collaborate, creating a space where people I thought would want to win. But realistically, what it was I was just doing the things that I thought was important, but I didn't have a third person perspective on really working on the things that really should have been indexed on and really being effective in what I wanted to do. So in our series, what this is really going to do is help you to take a step back. And if I were to say, like, let's learn how to, there's a saying to slow down so we can hurry up. Well, what would it look like if you were to maybe now that you're in your career, you've been working for a while and you had to restart over, how could you do things in a way that would be a lot more effective versus just efficient in what you have? And so from this, I wanted to take today to be like, hey, what I think you should know, or maybe what you should focus on knowing in your career development, and understanding the reasons why. And then from it, next week, we're going to talk about, okay, now that you know these things, I want you to grow in them. And how can you properly grow in order for you to be able to increase the effectiveness of what you do? And that's where efficiency starts to come in. And then lastly, I want to really talk about like, how does this help you to own your career? And the saying that goes behind that is not necessarily you feeling like you work for your company, but now, because you know what you want to work on and you have a growth objective, how does it now feel like the work that you're doing is actually serving you because you're becoming a better person in this as well? And so, from this, I want us to take a step back and first focus on okay, so at SASE, why is it that we do what we do? We've got conferences, we do webinars, we do a lot of material that we have. But I want to give you a peek behind the scenes in what we're really doing to make sure that you're able to progress in your career, not just function in your career. Okay. So the first session, what we're talking about is no. And I think a lot of professionals in the workplace, it's very unclear on what are formal ways to doing things. And this may be because you were never really taught this in a way, whether it's because you didn't go to a class and said, hey, this is the things that you should know to become effectively as a worker. A lot of people in STEM, at least myself included, I focused on like engineering. I need to know math. I need to know the different subjects of math. I need to know, calculus, differential equations. I need to know, statistics and probabilities, and I need to know higher orders of differential equations. And in physics, I need to know. And you could go through all the different things that we learned in university that focused on if we know, then at work, we are doing our job if we apply it. But I think this is where we understand like maybe we were working too much on the hard skills and didn't understand maybe the soft skills of how we apply this. And a simple example that a lot of you can think about is there's a lot of engineering in like our cell phones here, right? There's tons. And in this phone, I have a flip phone. So it even just goes even more than just the gears and the guts and the software on it. It's now starting to get into the user interface. And the user interface is why certain people choose Android, which is my platform. Some people choose Apple, which is another platform. My wife uses that exclusively. And how you like to interface, I would like to say, is the software, right? So if the hard skills is the engineering, the guts, and all the things that went in there, then the software is what makes this usable. So if we think about ourselves as what we know only to be the hard skills that we learned, the engineering, the math, the sciences, the language, and all that stuff, then the soft skills are how is it we become more usable in the workplace. Now, the hard skills, as difficult as it was at that age, technically, I would say, is the easy part. And the reason why I think the hard skills is the easy part is because anybody can learn them, right? There's a lot of your peers that are able to know the same material that you have. In fact, there's a fallacy that's going around that, hey, computers are going to replace us, AI is going to replace us because they know everything we do. But realistically, the challenge will be is the soft skills. Can computers replace people when it comes to how we want to engage with the hardware, the knowledge, and the information to make it more usable and practical, and such that, sure, we can get, let's say, we have these humanoid robots that are coming in. Sure, they can fold laundry. I've seen some of them cook. I've seen some of them walk around. But the soft skills is can they do it in a way that helps us to feel comfortable? If I take something in the intermediary, if anybody have like a Tesla and have used their full self-driving, like its full self-driving is probably pretty good and probably not going to cause accidents. But there's a lot of times that I intervene because the hard skills aren't working the way I feel comfortable in driving, especially if you like use the different modes. There's like Mad Max mode, hurry mode, and like regular mode. I feel like in the freeway, I have to just go on like regular standard mode or chill mode because it's too aggressive and lane weaving. Sure, all the cameras are going to able to mitigate and calculate the risk, but it's not at the level that makes me comfortable, so that interface is something that I can't use. So put that back into what are those soft skills that we need to know? What are the things that we should learn to make sure that what we know is not just based upon the facts and the information that, makes you replaceable with another employee? Why, in the workplace, you may feel like you're competing. Well, the differentiator really isn't going to be what you know. The differentiator really is going to be how you can know how to display this to other people in a way that I would say it becomes like your soft skills. Okay. So in today's session, these are the different learning objectives that I want to do. I want to share with you what I think what you should know as leadership soft skills. And we're going to call that the STEM Connect Leadership Framework. These are all the different competencies that SASE has had a chance to put things together in order for you to be able to engage and properly learn the material that we have. And sorry about the watermark here. Let me see if I could get rid of that here for you. There you go. And from it, my goal is to help you to realize there is a method to the madness. There is an actual solution that helps you to identify what the problems are. From it, I want you to also then start thinking about, well, what is the impact of that leadership skill? Some of that is going to identify just how it impacts yourself. How can you drive the skill set so that it can impact the rest of your team? And then how does that impact the rest of the organization? And so we call these like the three different pillars are how we want you to think about as you do an action, how is that going to impact, again, yourself? In accomplishing the role that you have, how that's going to contribute to the greater team. So when you have conversations with your manager, that's going to help them to understand why you do the things a certain way, as well as communicating to now your organization, whether it's corporate citizenship, whether it's doing things a certain way that's a little bit more strategic and scalable. These are the different things that we want you to also recognize, as well as understand that these competencies on what you want to focus on may look differently on your career band. And I'll take some time to also describe the different career bands. We have separated them out to what we would say like early career, which I think is like years 0 to 5. In your first 5 years of any job, I would even say of like not just your first job and sequential jobs, the first 18 months is just learning about the company, learning about yourself and how you survive and thrive in the new environment. But specifically in your first 5 years of your career, I would say those are the most formidable years because it helps you to validate what you thought work was going to be like. It validates, what kind of work you do enjoy wanting to do, as well as being able to integrate to the company culture and the people that you work with. But after that early career, we say is now your individual career life. Now, a lot of people might think that, hey, I've been working in this company for 10 years, and it may seem a little pejorative to say that I'm just an individual contributor. And I want to clarify that because in our framework, what we're saying as an individual contributor is that your role and responsibility is much different than I would say as a people leader, a manager. And I think what's important to also understand is being a manager doesn't make you, I would say, more important or a better person than an individual contributor. Because I have a lot of people that feel like, hey, I don't have any direct reports to me. I don't have anyone that I'm responsible for in their careers. I may have some managerial duties to oversee a project, and I have some people that I work with that they're subordinate to me in how they function in this role. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a manager as a people leader. And the reason why that's more important is because the function of a people manager is not about being able to get things done. And I think a lot of managers have a hard time with that. But a real good manager and what they should know how to do is get things done through other people. So it's really going to be more on learning how to, let's say, take influence. I think as an individual contributor, early career, influence is a very important tool that you would have. But as a manager, that would look different. As a director role, which would be the next column that we have for career bands, that would look different. As well as executives, your role and influence would look a lot more different. similar in skills, but how you want to practice that depending on your career band is specifically defined. And so in our framework, we define those and want to make sure that you're learning the skill the right way for your function versus just practicing in a way that you feel would work. And that's where we come out to the second to last bullet point of talking about how do we connect these common workplace challenges to help you to understand there may be what we say underdeveloped leadership competencies. And then as well as last is like, how do we help use the framework as maybe a way to self-assess? Maybe this is what's going on. Maybe this is a growth opportunity I should focus on so that I can learn how to do something more objectively and then subjectively apply it versus what I see most people do is they subjectively tend to think of what a skill would be, and then they work the skill in a way that works for them versus understanding reality of what it is and how to work that. My hope after learning all these things and what I shared as your expected outcome would be is I want each one of you to walk away with a clear understanding that your workplace frustrations, all the challenges that you face, and maybe like your goals not being achieved, not only just for yourself, but your year-end reviews are not necessarily going to be tied to, I would say, a personal failure. Like you didn't fail. It's just you didn't know what you didn't know. And that by understanding there are actual specific leadership competencies that you can attribute them to, then maybe it's a skill set that you can work on. For me, this is really hard to understand because I grew up with parents that were immigrants. I grew up with parents that never had an office workspace. They never had a space where they were career oriented. They were either trying to grow in a company, nor did they really have any type of interaction with people, even specifically with a Western corporate type of a culture. And so all I saw were my parents. They were Korean Americans. They were immigrants. They came when they were 20 years old. They bought a sandwich shop, and they're like just kind of winging it, right? They're trying to mimic American culture, probably trying to take things from TV that they saw, things their friends told them. And so they were learning ad hoc, but not necessarily formally, how they can actually specifically thrive. What I want to do is maybe provide that to you. My role at SASE is the learning and development director here. And everything I'm trying to do is how do we make these things repeatable processes? Because SASE's purpose is to help each one of you to feel equipped and feel like you have the tools that you need to be able to thrive in all the program we have. Okay, so again, love the chatter in the chat box. Please go ahead and fill that up. Again, Hope is going to answer a lot of these. She's one of our faculty staff. Hope, anything that I've said, you'd like to maybe come off mute and maybe share from your perspective as well?
I think a lot of what you mentioned, I can relate as an immigrant, almost like how your parents immigrated here. I had to relearn, unlearn a lot from my own culture, upbringing, and then learn how to be successful in corporate. The way I think about it is, I think this may be a cliche, is we think we have a good wheel, but it's a square. But we all know efficiently around would be a great way to go. But until we realize that, we will just work really hard with our square wheel and trying to go further, to go faster. But no matter how hard you try, it's just not effective. Like Jim, you mentioned, effectiveness is you do the right thing in the right ways. So we have to constantly ask ourselves, are we doing the right things? Are we learning the right things? Back to you.
Yeah, thank you. And then I even saw David's Sandu's comment about like focusing on competency. And I want to dig on that a little bit because I feel like competency was something that was so elevated for me, and what that looked like was getting good grades, right? If you had like an increase of indexing on grades, meaning that it wasn't so much about the process, but about the outcome, then hey, a lot of us got to where we are. And I'm not saying you're bad at the outcome, but if you don't have the proper form, you don't have the proper mechanics over time, you burn yourself out. You cause injury, you cause challenges that you might not be aware of, and that's when you get kind of blindsided in what you do. So doubling on that a little bit is like, hey, there's a saying, right? What got you here won't take you there, because you might have just been able to index on the strengths and just focus on the benefits of that, but you might not have seen, like, as you use your strengths more and more and more, how it also compounds your weaknesses, and how the weaknesses might have at some point had a tipping point where it now created a blind spot, right? And it kind of blindsided you in what you have. Okay. So my first thing that I'm going to do is to help you to understand what are the competencies. And please don't go crazy on this. Again, I will provide worksheets after for each one of you that have attended here live. And in this worksheet, you're going to have a chance to kind of learn about this. You will also have access to a ChatGPT bot that I built that is to help you to understand this and learn this. And if we have time at the end, I can give you a little demonstration of that and how to use that as well, because it's all going to go back to the STEM framework. And this framework that I'm about to share with you is like over 100 pages worth of documentation, right? And I'm just going to give you a glimpse of what this is, but my main goal again is to help you to realize there is a method and a reason to the madness that you're doing. And in front of this, my goal is to help you to understand that this framework is really a companion for your career. And so, my friends are doctors, right? I have some doctor friends, and my doctor friends, they have a tendency to love to go back to their book. And then this book has all the disorders, it has all the different type of symptoms that they have, and it's a reference manual. And nowadays, we all have access to something like that through Google, through WebMD. But what we can say is that maybe there are certain symptoms that you're feeling in health. Maybe your stomach hurts, maybe you're coughing, maybe your eyes are running, right? And in those three symptoms alone, you want to try to pinpoint what might it be, because you want to help yourself. Now, the easy solution a lot of times is, I might just take an allergy medication and just, hey, drum it up to allergies. I'm going to just take this pill and I'm not going to work on it, and hopefully the symptoms will go away. And if it does, that's great. But you don't know what you're allergic to. And so you're doing some work in your body, right? It's going to be maybe efficient at the moment, but it's not going to be effective in the long run, because you might not know what you're allergic to, or it might have just been something temporarily because you're allergic to, like, maybe certain pollen that comes in the spring, and you're taking this medication year round that you don't need to. And there may be other side effects to it. But let's say you take the pill and it's still not going away. You tried it for a few days, and then you're like, I wonder if there's something else. And then you are just putting eye drops in. You might be getting an inhaler, and you might, using that to help with your cough. And then with your tummy ache, maybe it's you take some like Alka-Seltzer or some type of effervescent tummy medication, some Tums, but something to alleviate it. And it might go away temporarily, but it keeps coming back. And by then, like by 2 weeks later, you're like, man, this is tough. I have to carry eye drops with me everywhere. I'm constantly taking an inhaler. I'm actually taking, like, some Tums every single time, and I'm taking allergy medicine. And this in itself is starting to, like, cramp my life. It's making my life a lot more complicated than I need to. And what I'm trying to help us to understand is sometimes we can just deal with this, and we can learn to, like, carry that load with us everywhere we go. And before long, now you're living your life with a lot of things that you don't have to do, and you're not getting better. And so in my career, I would like to say that when I had a hard time influencing other people, when I had a hard time working with people to be recognized for the hard work that I did and validated, and getting other people to want to bring on, I was pointing and trying to do all these other things to get them to want to do it. Like, I was buying them coffee, I was taking out to lunch, like I was doing all these things that I thought would cure this issue that I had. But the problem I was trying to do was sugarcoat the relationship, but I wasn't looking at inside what I had a hard time doing, which was I could point back to one of these competencies that we have. So here, what we've identified is probably the top competencies that we feel everyone should be able to do at a certain level. Now, don't worry, you don't have to do all of them all at once. Some of these you probably already are doing without even realizing it. We call that unconscious competencies. But that may also only work until you become a manager, for example. So when your career band changes, a lot of these things will start becoming ineffective. But what you do right now on some of these could also be things what we call unconscious incompetencies that you didn't realize you didn't know. And so therefore you don't understand why you have these issues and you might be addressing it with the wrong way. So Hope, you just recently in our Lotus workshop gave a talk on utilizing AI. But in your talk, you focused on a couple of competencies. Share a little bit about like, what was it that you're hoping people that were experiencing, maybe what were some of the challenges and problems that they had? I think it was in the area of communication. But how were you helping them to build a specific competency in that career band so they could become more effective? That way, they're not doing things the wrong way, but they're doing things properly and they can grow and scale themselves from there.
Yeah, as you mentioned, a lot of people are leveraging AI, but one way we can leveraging AI is related to the manager's competence of public speaking. A lot of people, when they think about public speaking, they're thinking about, oh, you're speaking at the town hall or you're speaking at a conference. But every single meeting you are at, is public speaking because you're speaking in front of your teams, in front of your stakeholders. You need to leverage the similar strategy for public speaking, right? Think about who your audience, what message you want to deliver, what is the impact, the goal you want to achieve. There is a common challenge for STEM professionals. When we communicate, we want to give all the information because we know we're so smart. We have all the data. But I shared a couple strategies such as bluff, bottom line, up front, which is what is the bottom line? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to get support or maybe a decision, maybe approval from your executive? Or when you inform your team, how can you make sure they are aligned with you instead of, oh, my manager is telling me to do this, so I should. Instead, there is a story of when you build a shape, instead of saying, oh, we're building the best shape in the world, you are selling them the horizon. Using the shape, how can we explore the world? Of course, everybody has a different horizon, different dream. As leaders, it's our job to understand our audience and communicate that way. So I also shared about a dozen AI tools. How can you leverage AI to one stone, two birds, right? AI tools, everybody need to learn AI, but also to improve your communication skills.
Yeah, so there's a competency behind every tool that we're teaching. And a lot of it is again to go back, what is the root challenge that we have? And understanding what is public speaking, what is it not, understand how it can apply, and what are some other challenges that we have. Another one here, for example, just up in the top is like growth mindset. And as a lot of people I talk about when I ask them, do you have a fixed mindset, growth mindset? Everybody answers like growth mindset because they don't want to admit like they have a fixed mindset maybe. But what does growth mindset really look like? And so what we would say then is, well, if you had growth mindset, there's different things that you want to do, but the impact of each one of these is not only going to help you, but by having, let's say, growth mindset or public speaking, you can not only impact yourself and your career and your goals that you have, it impacts the team, helps the team to become better, as well as it helps managers and then your organization to be better overall. So each one of these components has three different pillars that it can impact. And what I want you to see from here is that we want to develop first ourselves. And our goal is to make sure that we're able to practice this competency for ourselves and understand the importance of it, build some resilience and familiarity with it, and understanding that for it in itself, it helps us to do our job. But as you're getting better at it, you should naturally be able to influence other people with the skill set. So, for example, if it's about public speaking, I can communicate my thoughts and my ideas to my team, and I know how to speak in a way that allows to communicate and share my information across. For growth mindset, it may look like I am able to have a growth mindset. I'm able to want to learn, be able to expand the things that I have, so it helps me to do my work. The second pillar is, how does it actually contribute to the team getting better? So if I was able to use, let's say, public speaking, I can make the team better, not because I'm sharing my information to other people, but I could speak in a way that my stakeholders, to people, my team, they want to learn from me more. I know how to speak that resonates to a wider variety of audience, that they would want to take the information I have and have impact as well. And in growth mindset, I can now share how to communicate things in a way that other people would want to have a growth mindset as well, right? And then in the organization, how do I drive impact for the overall company? Well, it may be learning how to publicly speak, not only maybe in emails, right, and in letters. It's learning how to share thoughts and ideas in team meetings. But I might want to be called up on the public stage and to be able to address the whole team and organization. Can I speak in a way that's also effective so that it impacts the company, and not only helps drive my goals, the team's goals, but what are the company's goals overall to make sure that you have impact what you have? Okay, so I want you to see, like, each one of these competencies have 3 levels of where you can impact other people besides yourself. And then from these, depending on which career band you have, you may want to focus on certain ones. Now, all of these can be impactful no matter what your career stage is. But what we're saying is, and here's like a snapshot for those that are in early career, these might be things that you want to focus on right now, early on your career, to make sure that you are, let's say, collecting all the skill sets you need at this career band to make sure that you're able to engage and you're able to do effectively in your core role. So just for quick illustrative purposes, these would be, let's say, the ones for early career, and you can see it's defined a specific way, right? It's defined in what we say an objective way that would work across all 3 pillars. Here's the one if you're an individual contributor. Again, all of these are important. Networking is very important in all 5 categories of your career, but I would say specifically as an individual contributor, learning to network may be something that's going to be most impactful at this stage to be able to impact across all 3 pillars of yourself, your team, and the company. Here's one for managers, a list of things. Something that might be here is like giving feedback. Sure, as an individual contributor, giving feedback is important. So as an early career, but as a manager, learning to give feedback in a way that's going to drive change for your team, learning them to maybe do the work in a way that's a little bit more, I would say, universal for the company, doing things the company's way, not necessarily just their own way, or works in an impactful area for a narrow scope, but a scope that the company has. Like, that might be something that you want to be able to do as a manager for giving feedback. Here's another one for our director role. What are some of the things that we would say directors need to work on? And then what are some of the skill sets that we would want to focus on for executives? Now, all of these, again, are important for everyone at every career stage. What we're saying is we've identified certain ones that should be maybe addressed more specifically at your career stage. Because if we focus on maybe some of the root challenges, that some basic skills you should have at your level, then it could help you as you build that skill set into something that you're competent in, to be able to further along, be able to impact and grow your career in what you have to do. Okay. Now, from this, I want you to think about, okay, what are the different levels of competencies? Meaning, like, how well can you know this? And so I want you to think about, let's start with, like, say, growth mindset. And we're going to dig into this one a little bit deeper. I want each one of you to think about, like, what career stage you are in, and then from it, what level of competency would you say you have? So, for example, we're looking back here at the left, growth mindset. How do we define this? Well, it's the critical foundation for success and advancement at any career stage. And what we say is it often strengthens with practice and experience. This is a little bit about what growth mindset is. Now, how you practice it and what this looks like will tell me how good are you at having growth mindset. For example, If you don't have any growth mindset, it's not present, then what we would think that you believe is that all abilities are fixed and it's changeable. And I've heard that sometimes, like, you know what, this is the way I am. You can't change a zebra's stripes. Okay, possibly can't change a zebra stripe, but contextually, does that necessarily mean a zebra can't learn? Is that growth mindset, fixed mindset, right? That's what that might look like if you don't have growth mindset. That is what they tend to act on, what they believe. What they know is they're unaware of past personal or professional growth, like they don't see a history of growth for themselves, and they may not know that one's mindset has an influence on one's actions, meaning like how you think and how you perceive things really draws upon the actions of what you do from it. And what we may observe you doing is you can't identify self-growth areas like, hey, what do you think you can do differently? It's like, no, I can't do anything differently. I'm perfect the way I am. When we have difficult tasks in front of you, you might like, you know what, I can't do this. This is impossible. They just kind of get really dismissive on trying to learn how to do things in a different way. And realistically, you're also not looking for stretch goals or seeing what are other things you can do. It's like, well, that's not my job description. That's not for me to do. I am not going to try something. Now, sadly, um, you might have experienced this with some people in your life. And realistically, I would say at some stage in your life, you may have practiced this. Um, I have an 8-year-old daughter. This is something I work consistently on. And thankfully, she doesn't have growth mindset is present in her. And it's one of the core things that we teach on her is like, hey, just because you can't do it doesn't mean it can't be done. I started her out with puzzles as a kid, meaning like, those little jigsaw puzzles. And I told her, look, this one piece, it may seem impossible that you can't, there's no place for it, or it doesn't fit, or it may seem impossible that there's actually a piece that might fit in this one space. But I will tell you, there is a solution. Your ability to work through this problem and find a way to make these puzzles pieces fit and learn a system to solve them will help you to realize there's always a solution for every problem. It just may take some time. So that's my attempt to say, hey, having a growth mindset is that you're not fixed, but that there is a solution out there. Now, the next stage of that we would say is what we call emergent. If you are emergent in this, it means that you are aware that growth could be an answer, meaning that you don't always look to it as an answer, but hey, there's a possibility we can grow. You may recollect a few instances in the past that you can grow, but that you realize by growing, I can change things. But the challenge might be is if it's emergent is identifying how you may have spaces to grow. And as much as this may seem very rudimentary and low, realistically, I find most people here. Now, I'm going to say you being on this call probably doesn't mean that this is where you are, because you want to learn, you want to grow, and you're seeing that there's problems to it. But it's when people have a difficulty saying that there's something I could do differently to solve this problem versus the easier answer may be like somebody else can change or somebody else could do differently, that the problem I'm facing is somebody else's fault versus, hey, maybe that could be true, but I think I have a fault in this and I want to see what I can do about this. That would now put you in this proficient stage. The proficient stage is someone that believes that I can change, I can improve, something can always be better, and that there's a skill that I can do to influence. If things go wrong in my household, it's easy for it to blame, like, well, my daughter did this, my wife did this, or the dog did it. But I can also then say, well, my wife did it, but it's my fault because I created a situation that put her in a space of failure. So what can I do as a leader to make sure that she's put in a space to succeed, right? This morning, I misplaced my wallet, right? And I accidentally hit the button to open the trunk of my car before I opened the garage door. So my trunk hit the garage, it scraped the paint, I got frustrated at myself, right? I can look at that and say, okay, it wasn't anybody else's fault I could blame somebody for misplacing my wallet. I could blame somebody else for all these type of things, but I knew instantly my growth opportunity is to always check to make sure the garage is open before I try to open the trunk. I can blame my wife. It's like, hey, who closed the garage? I left it open earlier. That's not her fault. That's my fault, right? Having a growth mindset that you're going to take ownership. There's something that I can learn from this. And then from it, you could also describe multiple past instances. Like I'm sharing the one now. Like, what was a growth instant that you have? And it should always be in your brain. That's something you could recollect to pretty quickly that helps you to learn that you were growing and know that, hey, it's going to be hard. It's going to be challenging, but admitting that I have a growth opportunity is part of that to say, like, hey, it's going to be uncomfortable to admit my faults, but it's uncomfortable to admit your faults because it's uncomfortable to grow. Because if I have a fault, that means I could do something to fix it and become better. And I'm constantly identifying what can I do to take ownership? What can I do to better respond? And I'm going to take those challenging tasks and say, hey, I could do something better. And I think a lot of times in my corporate life, when I became the VP, like I took ownership of everything. And a lot of times you'll see people that says like, hey, ultimately it's my fault. It ultimately comes down to me, right? It's, hey, did I do a better job? Could I have done a better job of creating better goals and outcomes for a company in a way that our directors could succeed? Did I put my directors in a position that they could create more realistic, smart goals for their department to make sure that they're going to align towards the success of the company? Could I have trained them better on managing their managers to help provide the training that they would need to succeed? I would take all of that ownership. And as I execute out new plans, I should have account for those way in advance before there's even a sniffling failure so that I don't create psychological distress in there, right? That they feel like they become failures in a way. And that's where I think exemplary comes in. For someone that has exemplary knowledge and practice of the skill is I would say, hey, they're able to constantly improve. In fact, you're looking to improve before things become a problem. You're becoming proactive versus reactive. I'm proactively to even cultivate, let's say, a mindset of growth every time that there's space and capacity to grow. So, for example, each one of you can take something from today, hopefully learn from it. But as you learn from this, it's going to be hard to fit in a new practice into your already regimented ways. But to say, like, hey, I know I have to grow in something. I'm going to buffer an extra, maybe I would say 20% of time in my life so that I'm always allowing myself to grow and learn from what I've already accomplished, right? Sometimes you may do like a SWOT analysis. Hey, I'm going to take a look at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats from what I achieved. But ultimately, having exemplary area is something like, hey, I'm already incorporating this into my daily practice and accounting that this component of the skill is something I have to have all the time in what I do. Okay. So hopefully each one of you can consider that or consider these 4 different stages. And for an example, on growth mindset, can you see maybe where you lie on this so that you can grow? And so David's question, I like this, is any suggestion to improve a growth mindset in others, right? I think the first one, I think, and in the 3 things that Hope said, I think it's great. But I think number one is the most important. You have to be a role model of growth mindset, and it has to be a culture around you that it gives opportunities for other people to say this is safe. But culture is also a great peer pressure that forces them to have to learn this and be a part of this so that they can feel safe in engaging with it. Meaning like, nobody wants to be the odd one out. And so doing something different may feel uncomfortable, but if they have a community of everyone practicing that, then they could get more comfortable being uncomfortable in a way. And that's where number 2 comes in, right? Active listening, demonstrating the skill set, helping them to learn and share this may be one of those things. And David, I might even point back to this and say, look, like this is not me talking about it. Like I'm sharing this because I learned this, I practice, and this is what it looks like for me. And maybe they say, hey, where do you think I'm not practicing growth mindset? How would you see me along this proficiency stage? And where do you think I could do better? And then getting them to play with it is probably a way to practice this. Um, so last, what I'd like for you to consider is your career stage. Now, I mentioned to you, like all of these competencies are important at every single career stage. But what I want you to realize is how it shows up can be different. So it says here in the early career stage, like you're just growing and you're wanting to learn everything and anything. And it's so fun, like working with these recent collegiate graduates. I have about 8 of them in my local area that I do a lot of mentoring for. And they're like, whatever you tell me, I want to learn, I want to know. They're sucking up anything and everything. And they're like, I learned this on the internet, I learned that on the internet. It's great. But the challenge sometimes is recognizing you can't learn everything and everything. It's for my role is like helping them be more directive and not just know it, but to practice it and be really good at practicing it along this proficiency curve. That is what I would say like is important at early career. But once you've started doing your job and you're doing it for a while, then you'll start seeing like, okay, I think as an individual contributor, I matured a little bit in my job. I think I want to focus on this. I want to seek maybe a mentor. I want to seek somebody that can help me because I'm realizing I'm not as good as I thought I would be, or I'm not as good as I should be. And having that self-awareness so that I can grow is pretty much what it's going to be. And you're seeking out stuff. So a lot of you here might be like, hey, I think I know how to know, but I don't realize I know how to do this more intentionally. I want to learn how to do this. So I'm seeking this out with the growth mindset that I'm going to see what's out there and I'm going to learn and engage. At a manager level, you want to practice this. And a lot of times I tell managers, you want to say it explicitly. You might say, hey, I'm working on having a growth mindset. I'm not perfect at it, but my growth mindset is telling me when you say this, I'm going to ask more questions and understand what you're going to say instead of dismissing it right away, right? You're being explicit about that because not only are you having to practice this, but you're demonstrating it to other people to make sure you're establishing that culture that you have. Kind of like what I was sharing with David earlier. Now, the next level after that would be director and everything else. Like you're trying to figure out how do I foster that culture within my business unit? Or as an executive, how do I make sure growth mindset is one of the core values that we have in our company that we're always going to index as a tool to help us to get to our mission and our vision. And it's going to be foundational in what we practice. And it should be something that everybody learns how to do. And you're going to invest in it in that way. So that's what it would look like for each one of those stages when it comes to these competencies. Hope I'm going to pause. And again, anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand and love to address you. But Hope, anything else you want to add on any of these stages of competencies or for growth mindset, how it shows up?
You gave great examples. I do want to circle back what you mentioned, that culture, because a lot of people want to grow. However, in corporate world, let's say you say, I'm going to set a goal to complete this. And then you worked really hard, but at the end of the year, by whatever reason, because you're not in a vacuum working alone, you have dependencies, you didn't reach the goal. Most likely, you're gonna have a bad performance review because you didn't reach the goal. And that alone will diminish the desire to be growth mindset because there was a punishment for setting audacious goals. So those are kind of the culture leaders need to set. Even if you didn't accomplish the goal fully, but what happened? Did you try everything you could have done? Did you talk to the stakeholder? Did you try to get more resources? Did you escalate? All of that, if a leader do the things right, do the right thing in the right ways, it will create the culture to be safe for people to grow because they're not afraid of failure. Back to you, Jim.
Yeah, thank you. And so like there's a lot of things. I know this sounds a lot of information I shared right away. Definitely, yes, Aaron, the video will be later available later as well as a worksheet to help you work through some of these things. But the core message of what I want you to each think about is that there is a method to the madness. Like there is something behind the reason why you're facing the challenges that you have. It's an undeveloped leadership muscle, right? And then from it, like the more you could be aware of saying, like, hey, this not only impacts me, there's a way that I can impact my company, that they could value me better, as well as leading the organization, that everyone else would see me as a leader. And then identifying, which of these frameworks, let's say in your individual contributor role, should I maybe focus on first? And then from it, digging in even deeper. I also like even more so that you would have conversations with your manager and say, hey, manager, what are some of the things that you think I can learn? What are some of the things that I could develop in so that I could become a better contributor to the team? I could be a better contributor to the company, and it would help me with my goals. And that in itself would probably be where I would say is you're asking the grader of the exam, like your year-end review exam, the answers to the question so that you can learn how to practice solving those problems. And then from it, even getting advice along the way. Hey, Hope, you mentioned I should work on my growth mindset. I think I've identified that I'm open to learning, but maybe I come off of like I'm not open to learning because I don't have enough time in my calendar to learn how to do things differently. And I feel like I may feel like I'm going to fail and I'm not going to do a great job. And so I don't want this to look like a fixed mindset because I want great outcomes. But the growth mindset also says I have to be open to failure as well. Would you give me some opportunities to try things in a different way? And would it be okay if I didn't provide you the same outcome level that you're used to? I bet you 9 times out of 10, your manager's gonna say, yes, that'd be amazing. I would love for you to try something different and learn to do things a different way. So you could be a lot more useful and maybe do things the company way, for example, right? Those are conversations that you'd want to have. And then immediately after that project, hey, boss, I did this project. Usually I would have done it XYZ. This time I did ABC. What was your experience with me like? Right. Remember I talked to you, it's the software interface with you, not necessarily what you know, but how are other people experiencing to get what you know and putting in a way that's usable for them, right? That is what I'm asking for each one of you to start working on. Have a conversation with your manager. Now, a lot of you may have a hard time doing this. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of a cheat tool. In the meanwhile, between now and next week, maybe you can play with to identify. Like I said, I created a bot to help us with this. And so I'm going to change my screen. And I have to give you a caveat to this, meaning that your company may not like you using this tool because inside your company intranet, like this is not safe, right? But for yourself personally, I think this would be great for you to have, let's say, a ChatGPT account for your own personal use. And then here is the link to this bot, which you can use at any time. It is constantly being updated every year with the latest of the frameworks, as well as the things that our faculty like Hope is providing to help you to grow. So what you would want to do, and I kind of pre-did this for the sake of time, is upload maybe a sample 360 evaluation that you had. Maybe it's a performance review, and maybe you took a self-assessment on one of those, what leadership profile am I? Which Star Wars character leadership do I have? You name it. You could do Harry Potter, whatever. It's pretty intuitive and how fun this can work. And what you can do, and I love the narrative part, is I will dictate, like, hi, I am experiencing a lot of troubles having other people in my company help do the things that we're looking to do for projects. A lot of times I tend to be lower on their priority list. I've done a few things like, buy them coffee, do some chit chat with them, but I found like it tends to be very ineffective and it's exhausting over a period of time. Attached is my sample performance review, my personality test, as well as a little 360 that I have. Can you help me to identify using SASE STEM Connect Leadership Framework? What competencies should I be focusing on? Why should I be focusing on that? And then from it, what would you say suggested are some of the programs SASE has that I can look into? I love it because it's so easy, right? And you just put that in there, you submit it, and this is what it'll do is it'll go through all those hundreds of pages. It'll also go through all the programs that we've done up to the last conference. And what it'll do is help you to understand using our frameworks. I don't want you to have to dig through all the pages. Which one of our competencies, for example, are these documents pointing to? So that you can possibly have a greater idea what it could be as a leadership competency that we need to focus on, why would that be necessarily the leadership competence you want to consider? And at what career band are you doing in what you have? So for example, here we have to say, like, in your career stage as an individual contributor, let's say you're building towards, being a manager or a team lead role. What it's saying through your documents, things that I'm going to kind of scroll down, is you may be having an ineffectiveness on LP 2.5, leading, influencing others, managing laterally, having credibility, organizational and time management, and collaboration lead. And these are like ranked in order. I would probably have you try to find the answers probably in somewhere in 1 and 2. And it's telling you why it thinks that based upon the information, right? It's a doctor. It's like, say, here are my symptoms. Here's what's going on. What do you think it could be? Well, I think you could have, maybe influenza A, and it could be maybe have strep throat based upon what you shared. From it, it's like, well, if you were to work on these different type of competencies, I think you might be emergent on this, which is why I'm giving this as number 1, giving you emergent on this as level 2. You could be moving towards proficient, or you could be working on these. But again, let's focus on the top 2. Is like, this is what it would look like on how you're thinking, how this might be as is perceived by your team and your organization, right? And then lastly, what you may want to do is, talk to certain coaches. Oh, Hope, amazing, your name is on here. I wonder why, right? Like, these might be some people that you may want to consider in our staff on some of the work that they do. Like, we have webinars on all of them on our website as well, that you could get a list and say, that sounds like maybe something that we are working on and we have to do. And maybe these are some of the cohorts or trainers that you can talk to, why this would be good for you, what are the things that they're going to help you to learn, and what type of messages that you want to consider, right? Again, the goal is this tool is to help you to understand this. And then if you want your manager support on why this is important, and asking your manager to give you some space and time, or maybe even attend one of our SASE conferences, you can share, hey, based upon what you're sharing, I want to grow. These are the things that I've identified. These are some of the workshops that they have. Would you mind if I attended the conference in the future? And this would help you to do that. Oh, it looks like I didn't upload the personality test. But if I were to upload the personality test, it would then help you to understand, well, your strength is in this. Maybe this is the weakness in it, and this weakness is starting to elevate out on maybe you're just too goal-oriented, you're too good at doing things black and white, which is very good at mitigating error, is very good at mitigating risk, and is very good at getting there fast, but it's not good at bringing other people along with you in a way. So hopefully that's a little example that you can benefit from and seeing how you can grow. But I would encourage you to just play with it, like upload some documents, upload some things, and help you to start seeing yourself maybe objectively, and what are some things that you can work on. And then from it, I want to give you an opportunity to maybe just email me, message me, hey, Jim, this is what came out, or attend it next week. Because what we'll talk about next week is, now that you know this information, what can you do to best learn, so that it's not, again, just about what you know, but from this, we want to impact now. Okay, now that you know this stuff, now that you know this about yourself, and there's all these books out there that you can learn from, what is it the next phase that you want to do? Because you could take these competencies and they're universal, right? Everyone has some book out there to help you to learn it. But what's the next stage in growing? And what we'll go through is understanding that you'll have this information. A lot of people try to do it on their own, and they'll try to imitate, but accidentally innovate, and it creates a lot of danger there. So the best practice is always try to imitate something. And then from it, now that you know fully how to do the different competencies, you can then make it your own with full awareness versus doing it from ignorance, we would say. And the different stages of growth come through this type of a growth model that we believe everybody learns from, without whether you realize it or not. Just a lot of times what you find is people go from stage 1 and they try to go to stage 3.5. And a lot of the failure happens is because they're not addressing these 2 components, which leads them into what I'd say the pit of despair, and they're stuck because they don't have somebody that's helping them formally or informally with a skill set. You're not having short-term or long-term goals, and no one's really guiding you on what you did right. And instead, all you're doing is focusing on maybe what you did wrong. Okay. So with that, I wanted to thank you for joining. We're about 4 minutes over time. If you have to bounce out, you can leave. But I thought I would share one thing that I'm doing to practice some of these things. I'm not perfect at it, but Hope knows I've recently picked up golf 2.5 months ago. It is like the big thing that I said I would never do until I got too old, I was too weak, and I had no friends. Well, I don't think I'm too old. I go to the gym all the time, so I don't think I'm too weak. Maybe I don't have enough friends and I have too much time, but I figured this would be a great way to make friends. And so 2.5 months ago, a friend of mine said, "Hey, Jim, let's go golfing." There's this golf tournament that happens every single year. And I've always said, "Oh, maybe next year. Oh, maybe next year." My friend said, "This is the year." I said, "Fine, I'll do it." And he goes, "All right, go get your golf clubs, go get everything. We'll get you lessons and let's go play in the tournament." And so I said, "Okay." But as a coach, the way I see this is like, hey, there's something I don't know how to do, and I don't want to be in this pit of despair. I'm going to navigate first through, hey, I don't know what I don't know. And I don't definitely want to learn on my own and accidentally innovate golf because I don't think I can innovate in a good way. I may innovate in a bad way and get frustrated. So I went and I bought my clubs and I found a teacher and I walked in to this clubhouse with my golf clubs. But I did not like go learn on my own. I didn't go to a driving range. I didn't do all these things that I would have probably done in the past. Even though I was super excited about it, I was very patient to say, I want my teacher to tell me what to do. And I want to learn fresh versus gathering bad mistakes. So I walked in the clubhouse literally with my golf clubs, still wrapped in bubble wrap, still wrapped in plastic. And I walked in with a bag and they laughed at me like, "What are you doing, Jim?" I was like, "I don't know what to do. I want you to teach me everything from A to Z." And I said, "Hey, look, whatever club that you open, it'll be a ceremony." It's like, "Hey, Jim, you are now ready for a number 7 club iron. We're going to start with that." And it's been great. It's been a great ceremony of learning how to golf and continuing to practice along that way. So the cool thing is, last night, I was at the range. It was an indoor range, and I was at the sim. And what's cool about this, for those of you that don't know golf, is like everyone says, in 2.5 months, Jim, you have grown phenomenally in my ability to golf. My driver, I hit a carry of 255 yards, which is past, they say, my instructor's ability to hit a driver at this point. What's most important to realize, and the stats are back here, you can't see, was I hit it exactly where I wanted, meaning it was only 9 feet away from center, which is super hard to do on a driver. So that's something that I'm celebrating in what I was able to achieve. And if you want to see the replay of my shot, here it is. I hit it a little bit further than I thought I would, which is why I got close to the sand trap. But again, I think what I wanted to showcase, not as much as like what I can do, but for each one of you, what would it look like if you walked in and say, "Hey, I want to learn. There's a way to properly learn and I engage in that way, and that I can know everything about golf, but until somebody shows me how to do it, that I'm going to be work on trying to be just efficient, but I may not be effective in what I have." So thank you all for joining. I'm going to stop recording. If any of you have questions, more than happy to answer them. Not on recording. And more than that, if you have to take off, that's fine. But I will be sending out a worksheet so that you can review this video. It should be uploaded in our webinar section by the end of this week. And hopefully you'll do some homework. And next week, we could talk about how can we apply this into Grow. So thank you. Thanks, Hope, for being a part of this and sharing.
Jim, Aaron has a question regarding the calendar invite.
Oh,
She said she only received one calendar invite, even though she registered for all three.
oh, great question. It should have been a repeating calendar invite, but you can use the same invite for next week and the week after. It's at the exact same time. So so that should work for you. Sorry, Aaron, for that didn't work out the way it's supposed to be, but it should have been a repeating occurrence in your calendar invite, but sometimes Google Invite does not seem to work well with the calendar invites that it sends out. I don't know if Outlook, it's more oriented for Outlook instead.